Good afternoon, everybody. I am Jenny Newgart, Board for People with Developmental Disabilities and co-lead of the Disability Vote Coalition. I am here today with my co-presenter, Eileen. Eileen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me join you today. I'm really excited for the content of today's webinar. I am Eileen Newcomer. I'm the Voter Education Manager for the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin, and we are a proud member of the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition.
Great, thank you. And I would be remiss if I didn't introduce Anna Anderson, who is my partner in crime with the DVC at Disability Rights Wisconsin.
Hi, I'm Anna Anderson. Uh, Jenny, do you know how to put on the captions?
Um,
I'm recording it right now, so.
okay.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm glad you're here.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up our slideshow. And I also want to point out for anybody who needs it, we have a language interpreter that you can pin with the blue background, Kate B. We will take questions. Feel free to put it in the chat if you don't want to forget your question. Sometimes we can respond in the chat. Sometimes we'll wait till, an obvious break. And hopefully we'll have time at the end for people to ask questions as well. So if I can just ask, are you seeing just the slide and not the presenter mode?
It's in presenter mode.
It is a presenter.
That looks better.
That's correct? Okay. All right. So our webinar today is about how to be more involved in the voting process besides just voting. There are actually lots of ways that that you can be if people are looking for other ways that they can do that. So we put together a fact sheet that will be available and turned it into this webinar to get more people involved in the process. Before I get too far, I just want to mention what the Disability Vote Coalition is. We are a nonpartisan organization that wants to ensure that people with disabilities are able to vote, know what their rights are, know how to register, the whole process from registering to actually voting. We are coordinated by the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities and Disability Rights Wisconsin. And we have members in our coalition of about 40 community agencies who all have an interest in making sure people with disabilities vote. You will be able to access these slides, by the way, off of our website. And so you'll be able to click a lot of links that we have on here. Eileen, do you want to talk about the league?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. So for those of you who may not be familiar with the League of Women Voters, we are a nationwide organization, but actually have a very local focus. So I represent the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin, the state organization, and then there are 22 local leagues around the state. And we are a nonpartisan organization, but we are a political organization. Our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. And we've been doing this since 1920, so over 100 years now. And we really advocate for people to get involved and be active and participating in our government, participating in the election process, because we know that when more people are involved, our government better represents us. And we really want to walk the talk of empowering all voters, including voters with disabilities, and the full spectrum.
Thank you. So before we dive into our topic, we always like to start our webinars with some upcoming and current information. Everybody should be aware that we have a big election coming up November 5th. And what you'll see on that ballot, besides the obvious presidential election, voting for one of our two U.S. senators, all eight of our U.S. representatives or congressmen, 16 Wisconsin senators, which is about half of the senators, all 99 assembly representatives. And then we'll also be voting for the county district attorney and county partisan offices. So the district attorney typically works with like law enforcement and decide if cases will go to court, if they'll prosecute those cases, if charges should be filed. And then county partisan offices would be things like the county treasurer, sheriff, county clerk, register of deeds. So those are the kinds of things that you'll see on the ballot. You can't quite view the ballot yet, but when we get a little closer, it's usually about a month and a half out. You can go to this website and type in your address, and you can see exactly what will be on your ballot because it is different depending on where you live. And we encourage you to do that. It's my favorite part of the My Vote Wisconsin website because it really helps you prepare yourself, especially for some offices like those county level offices where you don't see a ton of campaigning. So you might not know a lot about the candidates for that. And those are important offices. There is a constitutional amendment, another one that will be on the ballot in November. I put the language on there and you can see currently what it says is that every United States citizen age 18 or older who is a resident of an election district in this state is a qualified elector of that district. And they want to switch that from every to only, and then added some language at the end. It may seem very minor. It's like essentially one word, but it does change the intention behind that. So we really encourage people to do some homework on the constitutional amendments. We are seeing these amendments on most of our ballots now, and it's just a little concerning that we need to be aware that changing our constitution is a big deal, and that people need to spend time educating themselves on what that actually means. So there are lots of resources you can Google for that. You can also go to the League of Women Voters for information about the amendments. So as you know, the general election is coming up on the 5th. Here are some key dates that you can refer back to. You can register by mail until Wednesday, October 16th. You can do it in person on election day. We are fortunate that you can register to vote on election day, and you can do it online through myvotewisconsin.gov through October 16th. Of course, we would advocate, don't wait. Now is a great time to do it. There's a bit of a lull between now and November. So why not just get it taken care of now instead of pushing up against those deadlines? All right, so we're going to launch into what the webinar is about. I know it says elections are more than voting, but of course we have to start with you need to vote. And particularly, I want to make the point that voting in local races is as important as voting in like a presidential race. Lots of people turn out to vote for the presidential race of all the elections that are out there. Obviously, those are the ones that most voters turn out to. But the local races are as important, if not more, because those people that are elected to local offices make decisions that impact us every day. So they're looking at things, they're making decisions about your library, your trash pickup, your water, what kind of affordable housing is going up, if you have public transit, how that works. There's a multitude of things that they're making decisions about that you will feel the impact of more than some of the federal races. So they're all important. But the local ones often have very low turnouts, so we advocate that everybody vote in every election. So the next thing we recommend is very simple. Anyone can do it. Remind three of your friends to vote. So again, I mentioned most of us are aware of the presidential election coming up, but a lot of people don't know about some of the smaller, more local elections. They're maybe not as well advertised, or people with disabilities in particular may not get the same kind of information to know about races that are coming up that they should participate in. Um, and I work with a lot of people with and without disabilities who I've had so many experiences where when I mentioned election coming up, it was not on their radar. So sometimes just being aware that an election is coming up and reminding people to vote is all it takes to get more people to the polls, and maybe a little push, encouraging them to take part in those local elections. Um, we also think it's important to encourage your friends and family to register to vote. So if they're not already registered, this is a great time to remind yourself, check my registration or get registered myself and start asking around, are your friends and family registered? We have lots of registration materials available. So there's a link there on our website to a voter registration fact sheet that walks you through how to do that. As well as a hotline that we have that people can call if you run into problems along the way. You can always call us and we will walk you through that. You can help them register online or to check their status on My Vote. And we have the link that takes you right there. Just for fun, I just checked mine before this, and everything was set. And it's pretty easy to check. You just pretty much need your name and address. For some things that ask for your birth date, and then it walks you through step by step from there. And then I think it's nice to offer to go with first-time voters. Sometimes it's that first-time experience that just keeps people from taking that next step. So if somebody is with them, making them feel comfortable, helping them with the process, they're often more willing to take action. We put a couple more links to registration resources to make it easier. We do many webinars that walk you through that process. We don't have time to do that today, but we do have these resources that you can check out if you would like to help people register. One of the things we really promote a lot is using the accessible voting machine. So the accessible voting machine, that is something that is required in every polling place. It helps people with disabilities in particular be able to vote privately and independently. So if somebody is blind or visually impaired, they can use this machine. They can put on the headphones. You can kind of tell she's wearing headphones, and it will read the ballot to you. There are tactile buttons that you can push to make your selections. And then most of them will print out your ballot and you stick it in the tabulator just like any other ballot. Somebody who has maybe a hard time writing or filling in those bubbles can use this accessible voting machine. But what we really want to promote is that anyone can use that accessible voting machine. Lots of times if people early vote, that is actually what you're using. A lot of places use those machines for the early voting window of time. So why is that good? A lot of times we hear that polling places have accessible voting machines, but maybe they're not set up correctly. They're not ready. They're not placed correctly. They should be in a position where you can vote without somebody walking by and seeing who you're voting for. So it's just not ready. And then that causes more of a delay for a person with a disability to vote than somebody else. So the more people that use this machine, the more poll workers are going to promote it. It will be ready. There will be ink in it, all those kinds of things. Poll workers will know how to use it. So if somebody has never used it before and might need help that first time, there will be trained poll workers who can do it. And best practice, we always promote, we think all poll workers should vote on that machine so that they have familiarity with it. And then there are some, smaller locations where the more people that use it, the better it is for anonymity and just making sure that this is a common um, thing that's available to voters with and without disabilities. There are a handful of places that will actually ask you when you go to get your ballot if you want one for the accessible voting machine or the regular ballot most of us use. So that's really best practice. We would love to see that happening everywhere. All right, I'm going to let Eileen take it from here.
Thanks, Jenny. And now, we spent some time encouraging you all to talk to your friends and family about voting, about registering to vote. Wanted to share some ideas as well of like how you can help spread the word. Obviously, calling your friends and family, texting them, having in-person conversations is going to be the most impactful way for you to encourage them to show up and vote. But another low lift way to share information about voting and to get involved is to share messages on social media. It's a quick, easy way to do that. And it's also a way where you're like, I don't know exactly what all the rules are. If you have trusted sources like the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition or the League of Women Voters, where we're putting out messages about elections all the time. So if you share them with your network, put a comment on there, like it's going to amplify it so more people see that important information about the election. One of the worst things that I hear is I didn't vote because I didn't know an election was coming up. And so even just a simple reminder like that of the dates of the election, where to go to find things like a sample ballot are really helpful pieces of information for people in your network. And there's a lot of people who don't vote because nobody ever asked them to. I love Jenny's tip about going with a first-time voter. There's other ways that you can also be encouraging for first-time voters or people who, are a little unsure with navigating the system, just being a resource. And if they have questions about it, being a space for them to ask those questions without any shame and is really helpful. And again, if you share, comment, like things on social media, your friends and followers are going to also see that what's going on, and so you may become a resource for them to ask questions that they didn't know where to go to. So that like I said, that can be a really helpful way to be involved. One thing to be aware of, though, with social media is we are in an environment of mis and disinformation. So before you like, comment, or post, or share stuff, be aware of what the source is. Is the information that they have accurate? If it's a trusted source, then it can be easier to share that information. But especially if you notice something that isn't factual, or is just downright wrong, it is important that you don't amplify that bad content by getting into arguments with people in the chat or in the comments section, or even sharing something that says like, look at this bad information. That actually gets the bad information in front of more people. So we would really want to be on the side of getting the correct information in front of more people rather than being in the space of sharing incorrect information, because we certainly don't want to dissuade people from voting. Next slide, please. There are also a lot of ways to help get out the vote. You can volunteer with different organizations like the League, like the Disability Vote Coalition. And if you volunteer with an organization that has been doing this for a while, they've got a lot of tools, they've got training, they can provide you with a script, they can pair you up with a buddy of somebody who has been doing it for longer. And it's a great way to connect with the community and to just talk with people about voting. I'm always really impressed when I go out and uh, sit at a table at like a community festival with my local league, at how many people come up to us and, thank us for the information. We're able to share some pieces of some resources that they didn't know about. Or there's people who come up and they know, hey, I don't know anything about registering to vote. Where do I even get started? And, people want to talk about voting, but they don't always know who to talk to. So if you um, volunteer with these organizations, you'll have the tools, you'll have the resources, and you'll be able to make a big impact on encouraging other people in your community to get out and vote as well. Next slide, please. One of the things that's really unique about Wisconsin is that our elections are run by our municipal clerks. So our city clerks, our town clerks, our village clerks, and we have we're the state with, if not the most election officials, one of the states with most election officials. And we have so many people who are working really hard to stand up our elections and to make sure that they are fair, safe, and accessible. And too often, municipal clerks only hear negative comments from people who are upset. And especially during this time where things are really contested about the topic of elections, just giving a word of encouragement and letting people know, letting your clerk know that you appreciate the work that they're putting in to make sure that our democracy is functioning goes a really long way. So one way you can do this is by sending a simple thank you note to your clerk. It could be a thank you card, an email, even a phone call to say thank you can be helpful. And especially if you are a voter with a disability and your clerk has some good accommodations for voters with disabilities, please do, let them know that, reinforce that behavior, because we want them to continue to look at ways to make their polling places even more accessible, or any part of their processes to administer our elections even more accessible. And if there's best practices, those are things that can be implemented in other locations as well. And again, just even letting your clerk know that you're part of the community, you're watching in a positive way, can go forward in making sure that there is even more support for making voting accessible for voters with disabilities. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about getting involved with Get Out the Vote, and I mentioned that there are some organizations. The League of Women Voters is an organization that we would love to have you get involved with us if you're not already. Like I mentioned, we have 22 local leagues around the state. They're all volunteer-run organizations that come up with, what are the things that we want to do to inform our community about upcoming elections and about voting and getting involved in the kinds of things that we're discussing here. But some other great organizations to get involved with are Souls to the Polls. They provide a lot of information for voters as well, and provide a really crucial service for providing people rides to get to the polling place or get to early voting. And so if you are a driver and you want to get involved with that, that can be a huge difference between somebody being able to successfully vote and somebody not being able to get to the polls because they don't have transportation. All Voting is Local and Common Cause are also organizations that you could check out as well, and they do work around encouraging people and informing people about their rights to vote and things like that. But some of the activities that you can get involved in are, voter registration drives, providing rides to the polls, like I mentioned. A lot of these organizations do text banks and phone banks, where you're having direct conversations with voters, and often you don't even have to leave your home for this. This is something where you can jump on a quick Zoom, get training, get the script, get the talking points of what you need to know, and then really, hit the phones hard and talk to a whole bunch of people who, really are looking for information. And another great opportunity to get involved is to send postcards. I know we have had really fun collaborative efforts with organizations around the state to do postcard writing. And I know me personally, whenever I get mail that has somebody's handwriting on it, I'm like, oh, wow, this is special. Somebody took the time to really to write this message. I'm going to read what it says, even if I'm, maybe I don't keep it forever, but I'm going to read it because somebody took the time to handwrite it. versus just, like a printed postcard that some of these organizations send. Those are maybe more likely to end up in my recycle bin right away. But there's a whole bunch of other ways to get involved, but these are just a few to get you started and thinking about, what is an organization that maybe I want to reach out to and be a part of. Next slide, please. So one of the best ways that you can learn more about the election process and all the ways that the safeguards that are in place, what's being done to make sure that voting is accessible for people, and then also to help literally hundreds of people register to vote on election day, or help them navigate from the check-in process if they've got questions about the ballot, how to complete it. Being a poll worker, so an election official, is a fantastic way of doing that. So I mentioned earlier that our elections are run by our municipal clerks, but they have a staff of poll workers that work at each polling place to make sure that things are working smoothly, that people are able to access the polling place, register if they need to, get their ballot, make sure it's in the tabulator. They also do really important checks and balances at the end of the day to make sure that our elections are accurate. And we are in need of poll workers now more than ever. After the COVID pandemic, a lot of poll workers decided, you know what, this is enough for me. So we need a new wave of poll workers. And like I said, it's a really great opportunity to learn more about the process and really help people out. And people with disabilities are especially important because, if you're a person with a disability and are at the polling place, you show that representation. You can be aware and inform your other poll workers about your experience and how to make other people with disabilities feel welcome. Make sure that the accessible voting machine is used, and that your fellow poll workers are trained on how to use it, and make sure that it's being offered to voters who come in to vote that day. And it's really just a great way to get involved and to get engaged. And it's a paid opportunity. So if you need a little extra cash, I know it doesn't hurt ever to have a little more cash in my pocket. It is one of the paid opportunities to get involved and really make a difference on election day. Next slide, please. Also, another opportunity on election day, and actually beyond election day, is to be an election observer. So one of the things that the League of Women Voters does is we run a statewide election observation program where we recruit volunteers from around the state to go to different polling places, see, what's going well, what's not going well, if people are being turned away, why are they being turned away? And we use this information that we get in from our observers to improve what we can on election day to make sure that everyone is able to vote, but then also to compile it into a report, which we share with legislators, with the Elections Commission, other stakeholders about how we can improve our elections. And you don't have to even be an observer with the league to do this. Anybody can observe any polling place in Wisconsin. And it really is a right that we have, and it adds a layer of transparency into our election process. That's really important to have, somebody who's unbiased at the polling place, making sure that things are operating the way that they're supposed to be, is really, really helpful and really valuable. And it's also really important to have people with disabilities go out and be observers, because you all know more about your lived experience and can pay extra attention to the different accommodations that are available for voters with disabilities, and also to provide recommendations for how to make polling places more accessible for all voters. There are rules for being an election observer. We really recommend going through training if this is something that you want to do. We host a training for our observers, but we also know other programs host trainings for their observers. And we walk through the rules. So one thing to know is if you're going to be an observer, when you show up, you're going to need to check in with the chief inspector. They're the election official that's in charge of the polling place. They'll tell you where to sit. You'll be given a place 3 to 8 feet away from the registration or the check-in table. And really you're there to monitor what's going on, just being kind of eyes and ears. You can take notes if that is helpful for you. Um, and there's more information on being a election observer linked on the slide here, which will be available after today's webinar. Next slide, please. In addition to observing on election day, there are a bunch of other processes that the public can observe and can monitor. Again, this is a really great opportunity to learn more about our election system and also to add that added layer of transparency. Transparency is only as good as we act upon it, and if we have access to the information but never do anything with it or never take a look at it, then we as the public are kind of missing a key part of our democracy. And so it really is important to have observers available not only on election day, but during these other processes. Some of the examples of things that you can observe are the pre-election equipment tests that happen in the 10-day window before the election. You can observe during in-person absentee voting, otherwise known as early voting, whether it's at your clerk's office or another location in your community. You can also observe the canvas process, which is when they do the checks and balances to make sure all the numbers are square at the end of the election. And then also after every November election, there's something called a post-election equipment audit, where they do a test of all of the machines that are used to count ballots to make sure that they functioned properly and that they counted votes accurately. We do run a small program that observes this sort of thing. So if you want to learn more about it, feel free to reach out to me after the webinar, and I'm happy to get you plugged into that. But like I said, there's a lot of opportunity, and you just need to be a concerned citizen who wants to go and learn more about the process to be an observer. Next slide, please.
Okay, actually, I think this is back to
Oh,
me.
yes, back to you, Jenny. Thank you.
So, some voting rights that we want to make sure that everybody is aware of, whether you have a disability or you support someone with a disability or an ally. There are some key rights that a lot of people don't know about, and we've heard heartbreaking stories of people who asked for some of these things, did not get it, and were not able to successfully vote. So the first thing is you have the right to vote privately and independently. And we talked about how the accessible voting machine is one way that makes that possible for a lot of people with different disabilities. You have the right to access the polling place. We do accessibility audits during these elections because, well, the law says you're supposed to be able to access the polling place. There's also the real world where you run into a lot of issues where maybe the signage is bad, or there is you can get in the building, but where the actual polling location is down half a flight of stairs, or there's lots of things that can pop up that make that difficult. What's not on here is that if that should happen, people with disabilities can ask to curbside vote, meaning two poll workers come out to the person's car, you show your ID, you vote from your car, and then the poll workers take it back in for you. So that's an accommodation that a lot of people are not aware of. Accommodations you can ask for are things like a chair to sit in. A lot of times these November presidential elections can create very long lines, so you may be standing there for a while. So it's your right to ask for a chair. A signature guide if you are signing the poll book and maybe you have a hard time seeing, the signature guide can make that easier. A magnifying glass to see your ballot better, or assistance stating your name and address. It used to be you had to state your name and address, but we did get a law passed that anybody can state your name and address for you. So if you're not able to, it doesn't have to be you anymore. It does still have to be stated out loud. you have the right to tools that help poll workers interact with like deaf and hard of hearing voters. That could be pen and paper is usually the simplest, or an easel for announcements. You can have assistants marking your ballot. This is the one we hear the most issues with, that poll workers tell people with disabilities that they can't have that. You can have help marking your ballot from anyone you choose, as long as it's not your employer, your union, or a candidate on the ballot. So if you don't have somebody, you can ask a poll worker, but it should be somebody that you're comfortable with, or again, you can use that accessible voting machine. Let's see. Then we wanted to leave you with some resources. So we have 2 pages of resources at the end here. Again, lots of links and phone numbers that you would never remember. So this will be available on our website. It's already on our website, actually. And that website is disabilityvote.org. My Vote is our first stop. All things voting in our state, you can do on My Vote, from finding your polling place, who is your municipal clerk, what's that phone number if I need to call somebody, what's on your ballot, requesting an absentee ballot. If you want to get an absentee ballot, you can go in there right now today and request that, and it will show up in time for you to vote November 5th. The Election Commission is another good resource. They've got emails and phone numbers and websites you can go to. I referred to earlier our hotline for anybody who has a question about the disability vote. Whether you have a disability or it's someone else calling on behalf of someone with a disability, whatever the question is, we want to help you. So you can call this number anytime. Somebody usually gets back to you, usually within 24 hours. The number is there, 844-DISVOTE, or you can email your question to us at info@disabilityvote.org. And then some of our other more general webinars will cover things like photo ID. That can be a big issue for a lot of people with disabilities who are non-drivers. So we wanted you to at least have resources if this is an issue. Bring it to the ballot, lets you know what you can bring. You can get a free photo ID for voting from the Department of Motor Vehicles. There's a link to find out there. The League of Women Voters has a helpline for ID. Vote 411 is a good website for nonpartisan information about the candidates. It's basically factual information that the candidates provided, so you can kind of compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. And then our coalition, our Facebook page, we hope you go on there and like us and share what we have, our website. And we do have materials, any of the fact sheets you see up there. We have postcards and posters, a plan to vote. We can send you those resources. You can print them from the website, but if you want some like in bulk, feel free to contact us and we are more than happy to mail those out. So those are our resources and our tips for being a more involved voter. We'll open it up for questions. As soon as I find the stop. Okay, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat, or you can just come off mute and ask.
Jenny, we had a great comment in the chat about someone who's interested in doing more partisan work versus nonpartisan work. And I just would say, you know, the League of Women Voters, the Disability Vote Coalition, we are nonpartisan organizations, but we do know that getting involved, you know, with a party that aligns with your values can be a really rewarding way to make a difference in our community. And so, you know, definitely wouldn't dissuade you from doing that. And would encourage you, if you're interested in doing partisan work or, you know, to support a candidate, you know, do get involved in their campaigns and especially, where it aligns with your own personal values. We know nonpartisan work isn't for everyone, because there are some things that you can and can't do. I know I find it to be extremely rewarding, and there's a reason why I do nonpartisan work, but I can also see why somebody would want to get involved with one of the parties or a particular candidate that they support.
Well, thank you for affirming what I want to do, but can you help me in figuring out how to connect with those people? Like I said in my note, the Wisconsin Dems Disability Caucus seems to be rather inactive. The people with disabilities for Harris had a meeting, but then no follow-up. Do you have any ideas for how I could do that? Or know of anyone who is focusing on the disability community from a partisan angle?
I don't off the top of my head, like, a well-functioning group, like, oh, just contact these people. And that's part of our problem with the disability vote is, it's not very well organized. It's often forgotten. When, candidates are talking about issues, they're not thinking about our issues. So, we try to do things like here are some questions you can ask candidates about disability issues, but we still need the people with disabilities to ask the questions and try to get a response. So sadly, I can't really point you in a specific direction other than it sounds like you're very passionate. So maybe you could become one of those people that push things. You might have to join an organization that's not doing a whole lot to get them to that point.
And I just would add, Kate, it does seem like you are more aware than maybe even make your question makes it seem like you are. But if anybody is looking for a way to, how do I get started with working with an organization? I mean, and this is true for a nonpartisan organization or a partisan one, is, do some research. You can Google, the the state party, you can Google the county party. They have links on, how to get involved, contact us. Same thing for candidates. A lot of them have websites. They have links right on there about how to get involved. And so that is a way to, at least open up the door and start that conversation about what it would look like for you to participate in the activities that they have going on.
Sorry, we don't have a better answer for that one, but Ernestine.
Actually, Eileen actually just said what I was going to suggest she contact the DIMS office, because sometimes the volunteers, they are volunteers. So maybe if that was a volunteer, not a paid staff, that could have something to do with the slow response. But I think she needs to let the campaign itself know that she's not happy with the response she's gotten so far. Mm-hmm. And might make a difference.
That's another great idea, though, that we could promote is more people with disabilities getting involved in your party's campaigns to make sure that the disability issues are, at least stated, at least, trying to get them out there. It might be slow going at first, but if nobody tries to start raising awareness about disability issues, we're never going to make much progress. And, it's about 1 in 4 people that have a disability. We're not a small group of people. So we just need to do a better job making our voices heard. Any other questions?
Maybe while we wait to see if anybody else has a question, I had another thought as part of our discussion just now that wasn't included in the webinar, but another way to get involved is to attend like candidate forums, debates, candidate events, and to ask questions of the candidates that matter to you. and about your experience being a voter with a disability, or, if there's other issues that you want to lift up, that's a great way to get involved. Have, FaceTime with the people who want to represent you in our government and make sure that your issues are on their radar and, hold them accountable as well. Like if they said that they were going to do something and didn't do it, um, be that voice, the squeaky wheel that, keeps bringing it up on their radar and letting them know you're not going to go away until it's addressed.
That's a great idea. And like I said, we do have questions ready to go if on our website if people are interested in that, or you can certainly, ask your own questions. All right, last call. Anybody want to ask a question? Or you can contact us anytime at that hotline or email. All right, well, we appreciate your time. Hopefully you found this information helpful, and we are more than happy to have you share the PowerPoint, these resources, and we will have this video link online in the next couple days. Thank you all.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.